you.
There's another person. Hello, can you guys hear us?
Can anyone hear this room?
Yes,
Okay, that worked.
And
So
then-
we can hear them and they can hear us.
Are we late? Are we late getting started? Is that what's going on?
We've had a little technical difficulty getting all of you connected into the meeting, yes.
Okay,
We
thank
just
you.
got there, just got it running
Yeah,
with an alternative computer and a little bit of rigmarole. Thanks for your patience. Okay, did that work? You feel good?
well, now they gotta get it up there. And I guess I'm the only board member attending that's really in person, so hello, everybody.
Okay, well, that's all on you then. I'm kidding.
I think I'll go home now.
Like I said, I have a sense of humor about everything. Otherwise, it's all too
My
burdensome.
best, that's what I'm gonna say. I'll do
Otherwise,
my
it's all
best.
too burdensome. I have a sense of humor about everything. Okay, let's see.
Good thing I ate dinner.
Okay,
Are we waiting for that, the camera screen, so all the other participants can join us?
at some point, if you want, you can explain. I just realized one thing.
Yeah, please.
Normally, when you do this, it's gonna say to the outside world that you are the Plainfield Vermont zoning board. But tonight, because of this, everyone out there in the world is gonna think that they're talking to Mark Barish from New Cycle Energy. That's
Okay,
gonna be on the screen. So you may just want to explain that we had to use a different computer because we just did. Yeah,
Right.
and it worked.
So somebody heard? Did you hear them?
Yes, we got
Here's the
audio.
volume.
We've
on
had
the
audio go
thing
both
right
directions
here.
already. Yes, we've heard them and they've
You
heard
them
us.
through the speaker.
Go ahead, say allow,
Okay. I'll go turn it.
click allow.
here, Mark, find yourself in.
Oh, yeah, I'm here. What do I do?
What's your name?
Yep, I see. I can barely see Karen. Really, really bad. See the glasses? I explained, I guess I'm gonna use this address. I explained to some of the people who work in my company that when I drive down the road, I see a double yellow line just like, but I see a second double yellow line on the 30.
We're waiting to get you all up on
Really
the
bad.
screen here,
And these
and then
glasses have
you can see all of
peeled
us on
like my
that
eyes,
mixed
so I
screen
see
there. Now everybody can
It's a
see
miracle.
you all.
It's a miracle. But if I put them on from like.
Okay,
in
thank you.
here, I think like they're only good. You know what I mean? Okay, good.
All right, I think we're.
There you go.
All right, then.
Okay, I'm,
I need my
you guys have a
bell.
meeting now.
Didn't bring my bell.
look, we got people up and the computer's working, so I think we should just call that a win.
I'll just speak loudly. Welcome, everybody. My name's Janice Warifin, and I'm the chair of the Plainfield Development Review Board. And we're a 5-member board with only 3 members, and one of our members is away. And so I would like to introduce Will, if some of you know him, up there in the upper left. He's the chair of the Plainfield Planning Commission. He's standing in for one of our board members. And on the far right, wave Mary. Wave Mary, that's Mary. She's our other development DRB member, and she's going to be taking minutes today, trying anyways, and we do have recording. I'm going to call this meeting to order at 7:19 p.m. and I'd like everybody to introduce themselves. Again, I'm Janice.
I'm Karen Story, Plainfield zoning
Let's just go
administrator.
down that way and then that back way.
Heather Devine.
I'm Mary Hamel.
Dennis Fowler. Ray Shaggy. Mark Parrish. Brad Miller. Frank Mitchell. John Fowler.
Caroline Covey. Dan Kitchen. And Darlene, and then, okay. Well,
And we need the
and now, how about you guys up there, introduce yourselves, other than Will and Mary, we already got you. Can you introduce yourselves up there?
Hi there, I'm Caroline Earl. I'm Janet Stewart's personal attorney.
I'm Teresa Quinton.
And then we see Charlie's there.
I'm Charlie Barish.
Okay,
I'm Andrea's husband.
and then we got Nathan Barish, right? Okay, he's on mute. So we're here to, we're gonna review and adopt our minutes, if you don't mind, after the hearing, okay? Since we're late start. Our other decisions, and we'll go right into the reason y'all are here, which is for the public hearing for the estate of Robert Barish, major subdivision. And we are gonna go through the subdivision regulations for, thank you. For this application, and Heather, you represent the estate, right? So I would love you to give us a brief scenario of what you're here for and what you're asking.
Thank you. So we're asking for a 5-lot subdivision of a large parcel of land that's owned by the estate of Robert Barish. Sorry, like the two numbers are up there. I may end up talking to her more than you guys, and that's just because you're over there, so. We've submitted a survey for the proposed subdivision. We're not proposing any kind of development. We're just asking to divide up the land so that we can convey it to the beneficiaries of the estate of Robert Barish. I think that we have almost completed all the requirements. We asked for waivers on most of the development, well, all of the development things, since we're not actually developing. The small things that are left are, we applied for a state wastewater permit. And I think under the regulations, you need to have all other permits that you need to have them in hand and go for the appeal period. So we've applied and we haven't gotten a response yet. There's no reason to think we won't get it. We just haven't gotten a response. So
Can you tell me what specifically that wastewater permit is for, since you don't plan any development?
yeah, so when you, in lot 5, is the only part of the parcel that has buildings.
Right. Yes.
And under the state wastewater regulations, if you subdivide a parcel that has development on it, then you have to show that there's another place that the wastewater system could go.
Right.
If it failed.
Okay. Yeah.
And you're not actually proposing building it, it's just that, it can go somewhere. So that's what the state wastewater permit is about.
Okay, thanks.
The other small things, we think we need to, you probably can't read it because I can't read it on the one I have printed out. You have it on PDFs on your computer. You can read, there's a little invitation on spring rights on lot 4.
I don't see that in a map,
And I think
one of these maps.
we need to make a small change on that notation.
And whose springs are those?
I did a research there. And Steve Durkin, according to my land records, but I have to talk about it with the surveyor.
Okay.
And then we also have what I think will be a small change for the portion of the boundary between the estate of Barish and Darlene Covey's property. I want to talk about that a little bit. So last time I was here, if you remember, I explained that when the surveyor started surveying the property, she discovered that a portion of this boundary between the estate property and Ms. Covey's property couldn't be drawn the way it was described in the chain of title and the deed. It's not that it was wrong, it's that it was impossible, is that to me to draw it that way. So the estate proposed to Ms. Covey that we adopt an agreement and just adopt a line. So there's communication about that. I said last time I was here that Ms. Covey was open to that. That's the last thing she told me. As of now, it's my understanding that she's not okay with the boundary agreement. I don't think that needs to hold up the subdivision though. The ambiguity in that little bit of the boundary is pre-existing the subdivision. It was there before this. It's not created by the subdivision. It's not really part of the subdivision. Since the surveyor found it, we can't just ignore it, but I think if we change the notation just to recognize it, then that would address that. I also would say that I think if the DRB was going to require that we resolve that ambiguity, that would end up putting a very significant hardship on the estate and on Ms. Covey. Because the estate isn't in a position where we can just not ask for this distribution. We have to ask for the distribution, we have to ask for the subdivision permit. So if we have to resolve that ambiguity in order to get the subdivision permit, and Ms. Covey doesn't want to agree to it, which is absolutely her right, the estate's only other option would be to sue Ms. Covey and actually bring a case in civil court with quiet title, which seems, I think, a very extreme response, and it's just simpler, better just to leave that marked as it's ambiguous and let it be a private property thing, and not having to be involved in the subdivision regulations. So that would be one, I think, small change we'd have to make, and then we'll also need to have it properly certified by the surveyor. There's one other thing.
Excuse me. I can't hear.
Okay, thank you, Charlie.
I think it has to be, the volume has to go up on his thing, because I don't think that's attached.
Oh,
So,
this is attached now, right?
right, but I don't think they included the owl for volume, did you?
That's all the way up.
Can you hear now?
Can you hear,
Yeah.
can you speak again, Heather? And let's see if Charlie can hear you. Charlie, can you hear Heather?
No,
Can you hear me?
yes.
Heather, can you maybe speak louder?
Or maybe she has to come and talk in front of.
She should move closer to the microphone.
Okay, move closer to the mic.
Well, maybe she has to come and talk to the screen.
Well, no, the owl should be
Okay.
picking her up, I think.
Can you hear me better? Yes? No? Can you hear me better?
A little bit.
A little bit?
You want a chair so you could feel comfortable?
Oh, I'll just share. Okay, so there's one other thing I wanted to talk about besides those survey matters, which was the potential easement. That was brought up at the last meeting, an easement to benefit lot 4. And I want to argue that really doesn't need to be considered today here before the DRB. It's not a relevant issue for the DRB. The regulations require that every lot have at least 300 feet of road frontage. And all of the lots do have at least 300 feet of road frontage, except for lot 5, but that's pre-existing and we can't do anything about that.
Right.
But lot 4 has at least 300 feet of road frontage, and that's all that's required by the regulations. So I think that's pretty simple, and the DRB doesn't need to consider anything else, such as a proposed driveway or easement. And I also would say that if a proposed driveway or easement were to be considered, it would be a very, very complicated issue. You know, there's nothing in the regulations to talk about that. So we don't have any legal standards to say when road frontage isn't enough, if it's not enough, how would you prove it's not enough? What counts as feasible, what doesn't, what's too expensive? And, you know, there's kind of an analogous issue in case law of an easement by necessity, where somebody can ask for an easement over a neighbor's property if they can't access their property. And with that case law, it basically says, look, if it's inconvenient, if it's really expensive, it's really difficult, you still don't have an easement. That if you have road frontage, you have road frontage, no matter how expensive it is. So that's kind of all we have. So it would be very complicated, I think, to figure out the legal issue involved. And it would also be a very difficult evidentiary issue, because you would probably need to have competing engineer experts, and there would be a lot to consider there. And it also would probably get into a lot of issues that are way outside of the DRB, like what the beneficiary rights are, what does the stipulation ordered by the court require, by the probate court require, what was the testator's intent. And there's also, I think, procedurally, it would be very strange in that the beneficiaries of the estate are not owners of this property. The estate is the owner of the property. And except for Charles Barish, they're also not abutters of the property. So for the purpose of this hearing, the beneficiaries are essentially just members of the public and don't have any more or elevated rights over that of any other member of the public. So if there was going to be a argument or a discussion about easements benefiting one beneficiary, burdening another beneficiary, that would probably end up being litigation basically between members of the public here in the DRB. Versus in the probate court where the estate is a party, well, the executor is a party and the beneficiaries are all parties. And the probate court is set up to deal with, competing evidentiary concerns, set up to look at what the testator intended, what the stipulation ordered, competing concerns of the beneficiaries and fairness to the beneficiaries. The probate court is totally set up for that. So despite the interest here, I think this is actually a very simple, straightforward subdivision proposal put forth by the owner of the property, which is the estate. And the only question really before the DRB today is whether the proposal meets the subdivision regulations. I think that it does. I think that you can leave any kind of easement issue to the probate court and doesn't need to be considered here today. And we can just look at if there's anything else in the survey or anything else that needs to be done to comply with the regulations. So that's, I think, all I have to say until you have some questions.
All right, well, thank you. Not right now. Let me look at the regulations a minute, Jim. Then we can go. I'd like to go through the regulations and when you have something to comment on that specifically, yes, there are maps here. Each of you can come and get. They're two-sided maps. Now, who submitted these?
It's two maps, each one-sided. There's a north side and a
South side,
and
yeah.
states.
Okay, thank you. So you take one of each, yeah. And anybody else who wants one. I just would like to look at our regulations. We have the estate who has a legal understanding of our regulations. I would like us all to go through them and see that what has been proposed fits within our our zoning regs. So this is the final plat, excuse me.
You look at the list of all the things that are listed there.
So we need to look at subdivision 210, subdivision regulation, section 220, major subdivision, section 230, final plats, section 300, preliminary application, section 310, final plat for major and minor subdivision.
And then these are the waivers.
And these are the waivers that she asked for, that the estate asked for, which are section 130B waivers for section 410B. I've been through this stuff before. F, G, H, I, J, section 440, section 450, section 460. So often major subdivisions regulation has a lot of sections for development. And because this application isn't asking for any development, then a lot of these conditions are waived, but we still need to go through them and make sure that we're following our procedures. So let's just start with, I'm not there.
220.
Breathe. Okay, here we are. Major subdivision. So the preliminary plat application has been given up to us and it shall contain the items that are required for major subdivision, which they have the boundary lines, they have the spring, they have the topography, all of these things that need to be in here.
And we've warned it.
And we've warned it. And you've noticed give notice to the butters. We're at the hearing.
So this is sort of kind of a preliminary, then you would move on to just make sure that you had all those things, which we do have.
Okay, we have all those things. Well, I guess my question, because we have people concerned about wetland access, I know that when we look at subdivisions, we do look at, but not when there's no development. That's my question to you as the zoning administrator. is like you need a minimum of 300 road feet,
Yes.
but you need that for development. And we can't have a landlocked piece of land, but it's not landlocked because it's accessible by a road. So we're kind of in this,
And you wouldn't be able to do it, you'd have to move on to like further into
to
this.
these regulations for building, and we're not, and they're asking for variance.
For
Because
waiver.
there's no intention. And what I hear the state arguing is that the probate court is much more able to negotiate between the beneficiaries those issues. I do want to acknowledge that there's those concerns amongst the beneficiaries, but I'm going to have to agree with the position, and you can speak after I'm done, that it's not for us to make these decisions. Our scope is limited. It sometimes frustrates me as the chair of this board that we have not that kind of authority, and so much has to go to the courts, and that we can't work it out amongst ourselves. So then Janet, go ahead.
I'd like to address a couple of the points. First of all, I'm quite confused. The executor represents one person only, the person who is not able to speak here. She is representing the interests of the decedent to the best of her ability to carry out his wishes. I am appalled that she is talking about litigation against Darlene Covey. My dad is rolling over in his grave. For 55 years, they coexisted. The Coveys, the Griggs enabled my dad to live out his dream of owning land. My mom went to Goddard. He fell in love with Vermont, and he found this beautiful farm, and he bought it. And for 55 years, the Griggses took care of my dad. They built horse trails. They taught him to ride. They trained his polo ponies. My dad took care of the Griggses. I remember him putting on what we called his gas station suit. It was a little onesie suit, white canvas suit, to go down and help conflicts between family members. They couldn't have existed without each other. And to think of the executor talking about bringing litigation against them is one of the most painful things that I've heard. In terms of the boundary agreement, I'd like to give a little history. The executor asked me to meet with the surveyor and Darlene Covey because the land that we were trying to develop a boundary agreement would eventually be mine. It is not mine now, I understand that. However, it is going to be mine, and to prevent conflicts in the future, it was important for me to be part of that. Many of you know how surveys go and how Plainfield goes, and the survey and the will says, go to this tree and go to that rock and go to that gully. That's what was happening. There was never a survey when the land was transferred from Covey's to my dad. Through no fault of their own and no evil intention, it turns out that the Coveys built a shed in the estate's right of way. It did not allow the 50 feet that was needed to have a building. Nobody knew that until we started surveying it and trying to find the line. I could not imagine the estate or my dad wanting to tell Darlene Covey that she needed to pick up her house, tear down her buildings, and move them because they were in the right of way. And so we met with Lisa, we met with Darlene, and I said, fine, take whatever you need so that her house is never questioned whether it is in the right of way. I don't want that ever to be an issue. If she chose to sell it and somebody said, you are out of compliance with the town of Plainfield.
Can I just, Janet, are you talking about right away or setback?
Setback.
50 foot.
Sorry,
Okay,
setback.
thank you.
Thank you for correcting me. So we did a line and we made it go farther onto the estate. The line was flagged. We all agreed. We thought it was completed. The surveyor came back 5 more times onto Covey's property, onto the estate, moving flags, moving pins, and we don't know where that line is anymore. And the reason Darlene is not signing that is because she doesn't want to end up with an out of compliance home. And we have begged for more information about it. And to be perfectly honest, this has been an extremely painful situation with the executor who I thought represented my dad's wishes. She told Darlene not to talk to me, that I could not be trusted and she could only trust her. And we're in a limbo of trying to figure out how to resolve this. Darlene is suffering because we're trying to do this right. And the one person who could help us do this right, I'm not sure who she works for and represents. It's not Robert Barish. It's not Robert Barish. When she talks about going to probate court for a right-of-way question, that's not a probate court issue. That's a family issue. We take care of each other. We have a piece of property that has now been deemed inaccessible except through a right-of-way. I understand what your regulations are. I understand. We did what you asked us to do. You asked us to find out if we could access it from that property. We cannot. We cannot. And so the only way to access that is with a short right-of-way up the driveway. I don't understand what the big deal is. I don't get it. My brother and I bent over backwards through mediation to give Mark everything he wanted, to give Nathan everything he wanted. And we're not asking for anything monetary. We're not asking to take any of the property. We're asking to be able to help the town have a developable piece of property. Without that right of way, I can never set, Mark, could you wait just a minute? I'm speaking. I can never set foot on my property. I can never develop it for the town of Plainfield. The town of Plainfield can never collect taxes from a home that's there. I'm not saying that's what I'm going to do, but that is your task, is to make sure that Plainfield has developable property. I'm trying to do that. And I'm just devastated with what has happened in terms of my dad's wishes. I was my dad's financial and physical guardian, and I have his medical records. And the one thing that is constantly in there is that he was afraid of strife, and he was afraid of people talking about money. And he asked, and I have the records, that Mark not be allowed to visit, that Mark have somebody present when somebody called. I had to be present, or the chaplain, or the doctor. People were present in the room when Mark called my dad and it demanded money. My dad was bawling and he said, I will not visit you or call you again unless you send money. I don't mean to bring that
At
into
this
that.
point, this is getting
I
into
understand that. I'm just saying
family
that I think
dynamics
we
that
should be able to just resolve
right.
it.
So that's a family thing. That's not a
Correct.
town
I
thing.
understand that. But
So-
probate court, when the executor started talking about going to probate court, who wants to do that for something that's trying to help a developable
Well,
lot
I
that's
can,
like,
the estate is already in probate because that's how it happens when somebody dies and it's not in a trust already, it goes to probate. That's a natural progression of distributing one's assets. Like if I was to die tomorrow, my assets would go to probate.
we've
and
done
then-
all that. We
right. So
distributed
that's
the
what,
assets.
so that's the natural progression. It's not like a problem to go to probate. You said, so I think that your estate, the estate of your father is in probate, and hopefully that's a place where these questions can be, with the evidence you're providing me that I can't consider,
I don't see this as a division of property. We have done that. We have done the safe deposit box. We've done all of the,
well, the land is a
boundary
part of
line.
that too.
right, and the
Right.
boundary lines are all drawn. This isn't about who gets what. It isn't, we thought we were all done with probate.
This is about the town approving this map, basically.
So also, I don't understand the executor saying that we can go forward with a subdivision without Darlene Covey's signature. The reason
let
there
me
is no
ask
signature
Let me ask more
Okay.
about that,
is
okay?
because we want to be sure we have it right.
Yeah, let's ask
Okay.
her. Thank you.
Yep, thank you.
Yeah, Darlene. I don't understand. Can you hear, Mary? Can you hear?
I think if they just came up closer to the
Please come up
microphone.
to the owl here if you're gonna speak here. but
Sure.
You got the little owl there too. You can see.
Do I have to talk louder? I can do that.
That also is very helpful. Thank you.
What I don't understand, this really isn't about the boundary line, but what I don't understand is how they can approve a subdivision on a property that's to go to Janet in the end, that has no right of way. I don't care if it has frontage, I'll tell you. On that frontage, there is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 springs. All have lines all the way down through. There might be frontage, but that's not access.
I
And
have the
it's-
same question.
Yes, so
I do
there's
too.
no access to. on
My
that side of the property.
understanding is that in a major subdivision, we have to consider access,
Well, there's, yeah,
okay? And so that was my question to you, was
Yeah.
access. It's not merely, and that's where I'd like to look at
right,
these.
that's
My
what I'm
understanding
saying.
is that it need, even if it's not being developed at this time and we can make exceptions for some of those,
Right,
what we had to do when we subdivided, the property on Country Club Road all those years ago. He had to have right of ways to his property.
right,
All the lots had to have a road and a right of way. Accessible. All lots had to be accessible. And what we're being given evidence is that parcel's not accessible.
Well, that's
correct.
That's why you have to go through all those lists so that we can decide about that.
Right. So that's what we're gonna do.
Okay, well, I was brought up on the land. That land was my parents' before the Barishes bought it. I'm 70 years old. I was born there. I'm still there. I grew up there. I know the land and I know where the springs are, where the
And we don't
lines
want,
are.
we don't
and
wanna
it's-
ruin the springs and we don't
Yes.
wanna take more and make roads in more wetlands. And that's
Right,
part
and
of
plus,
what the,
legally, putting a road across a spring line.
I
is-
don't think is.
In
a
the
good
state
I
of
sup-
Vermont is
I
not
agree
gonna
with you.
happen.
I agree.
And you put with a, I mean, it's, are they here? My Springs, Palaces Springs,
I did see springs on those maps.
Durgan's,
I saw springs on, well, they were on the other side of
right.
the Durgan property.
But they had one missing. I don't know if they put it on or not.
Might not be on the original one.
Right, that's why they gave us the new one. Is that the new one?
No, this is the first one. that came. It did-
Okay, they're not on there at all, but the final one, there should be the springs on it.
Well, there's springs right here,
Okay,
spring tiles, but then there's nothing over here.
over where?
This is the 300 foot of road frontage that is being considered as a possible access.
Well, yeah, but you've got spring tiles. They had, how many springs have they got on here? They had 2 together.
So this is, Steve Durgan's property right here, okay?
Okay,
And
But-
you're over here, right? Is this you? No.
but
Or
there
you're over
should be,
here.
see, this isn't, there's 2 springs together that go all the way to my
Here.
house. Okay. There's 2 springs side by side,
But
okay?
those are
These-
the ones up here.
these
Those
are
the
mine.
Same one.
These are mine. They go all the way to my house down that way.
So they
Okay.
come through here.
They come all the way, there's a right of way that comes all the way down. Where is my house on here?
It's not.
It's not.
It's up here.
Okay, well,
It's right, here.
okay.
See the jet?
All right,
here,
all
my
right.
Property.
So
It
these
comes-
springs go, whoops, oh God,
It's a touch strand.
that I
say.
Here,
okay,
here,
don't do
here,
that.
darling.
okay.
Here
the
they
two-
are, and here's your
Okay.
property over
Yes,
here.
so this spring line goes from here all the way to my house that way.
So
Okay,
that's,
so there's no access there.
okay.
Okay, then there is
This isn't road frontage here. This road frontage isn't 300 feet,
But
but
you
sh-
can still access.
but she could help, right, but it's.
Where?
Right here is access. These are two road frontages to the parcel that's gonna, is being.
No, because
What's that?
there's two springs out in here. There's,
More springs?
yes. There was one spring missing on here, but there's two springs up higher.
These two?
No, those two are mine.
Yeah, and then there's two
Okay.
lower, you're saying?
And then there's
Like
one
right
other
here,
over
right
here
here,
that
yeah?
the line goes, and
Yeah.
then there's one up here
Oh, that's not on the
that's
map.
missing,
Okay,
okay?
all right.
But there is one up here that's almost to the line to my 13 acres.
Which is over here.
No, I have 13 acres up above.
Of
Yeah,
Marks,
it adjoins Mark's.
right?
I have 13 acres.
Right over here, Darlene Covey. So
Yeah.
you also have property here.
Yes,
See, this is why this map is crazy, because look,
Yeah.
this road connects right here, right? That would be the road, and you own this area as well, right?
the road goes right along here. This way.
No, see, that's Fowler Road right there. And it goes like this.
Well, the road goes
Oh,
right
along.
right past the 13 acres. It's below Mark's,
Yep, all right.
okay?
It's right here, okay.
But there's another spring missing.
So this isn't an access. This
No.
would be the only access. So we're looking at this one there as the 300 feet of road frontage. over
Where?
Here,
No, they'd be crossing my spring line.
right? Okay,
No,
thank you.
The spring line's
Okay.
all the way up through there.
Okay.
There's no access.
All right. Can I ask you also about the boundary line?
Mhm.
So if they were to resurvey their property and give you the boundary line that you and Janet originally agreed on, is that something you'd be satisfied with?
Yeah, well, it wasn't the boundary line that caused the problem in the beginning. If it had just been the boundary line, it would be one thing. What caused the problem between me and the estate or whoever's dealing with it is when they put the alternative wastewater
Yeah,
on the homestead
Yep.
of Barish's.
yep,
They had 28 acres to find a spot to put it on. But they put it close enough to my 13 acres. So now I have a large isolation area on my property.
okay, well, thank you for letting us know.
And yeah, legally, they could do it. And the way I found out about it, they sent me a certified letter in the mail and said,
We did that in the property. I haven't. seen
yeah,
it
your
here, so-
property is now isolation.
Yeah, yeah.
So this is my 13 acre lot that I have to develop. That now
Has an
I have
isolation
an isolation area
area.
on it,
Yeah,
and there's nothing I can do about it from the state. And they don't understand why I'm upset when there was 28 acres to find a spot. That's the whole nutshell of everything.
thank you.
You're welcome.
Who else would like to speak? Yes, please.
All right. Good evening, ladies. Good evening, everyone. Good evening. Hi, Charlie.
Can you hear him,
Can
Charlie?
you hear me, Charlie? Do I need to speak?
I
louder?
can. I
Who
can
is-
hear you.
Who is speaking?
Mark,
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Mark Barish, everyone. Hi. I grew up here in Plainfield. I actually, my family's had quite a relationship with this town hall. My sister sat on the select board here in this hall. My
Dad,
father
you-
ran the board in this hall. My
you're
brother
not-
was the
You're
town
not looking at the camera.
Mother
you know,
was the
you're-
the who collected all the votes for 40 years in elections and married me on the field.
Mark, we can't hear you.
And
You're,
I'm
you're not,
from-
you're not speaking at the,
Not even high school.
hello, hello,
I'll
you're not,
move as I can.
Charlie is having a hard time
Oh,
hearing you or
where would you like me to
seeing you.
speak?
Maybe if you can pull up a chair and
Whatever
sit
you'd like.
down. If you could pull up that chair and sit down, you'll be in front of a camera in which he can see you,
Let's go.
right there.
How's that, Charlie? Can
There
you see
we
me
go.
now?
that's good.
Let's assume yes?
Yes,
Yes,
Okay.
that's good.
speak loudly.
Okay, great. I'll speak up. So I want to cover a couple of things very quickly. First of all, your regulations are very clear. A piece of land has to have 300 feet of road frontage. My father's dear friend and attorney of 50 years, Paul Gillies, wrote this will with my father, and they were very, very careful to make sure that all of the deeds of land and all the parcels could be deeded under Plainfield zoning law. And that is why Janet has 300 feet there. By the way, she can have road access either on the 300 feet or on the 200 and some odd feet on the other side of Steve Durgan's if she's worried about a road. But I have here, just to start out, a text message that I'll share, and I'm having a formal report written as well. But when I grew up here, the Farnham family ran the roads in this town, Alan and Darrell Farnham, some of you may know that. Lloyd Farnham built my father's driveway, and I paid him $8,500 while I can't own the house that's been held up in probate to rebuild that road. So he knows how to build roads. And what Lloyd wrote to me yesterday about Janet's access is, I would think that it would be possible for sure to put a road in there. That's from Lloyd Farnham. I'm having another professional engineering firm write a report. However, I'm spending those thousands of dollars as a waste of money because she doesn't need to have a road. You have laws in this town and it's 300 feet of road frontage. So there's nothing to talk about. Now, in terms of, I don't want to, Janet, you became quite personal there about me and you and Charlie, and that's your prerogative. But when you said that you bent over backwards, I want to say that Charles wrote to me about this matter, so we all know that, and said to me, you know, I gave up 10 acres of land to Janet in order to make this work. And I think you should acquiesce too and give it up. And I reminded him that he's being.
Mark, I can't hear you.
Mark, he can't hear
You gotta
you.
talk-
I'm sorry.
talk
He-
to
that
the
Charles
computer.
knows that he's being, and he acknowledged to me and apologized after that because he was confused. He's being paid $170,000 to give up 10 acres of his land. No one offered me 5 cents, and I have never once been asked about this easement. I received an email with a consent form. It's right here. And in the last meeting here, Janet did speak clearly, but the fact that we had signed a document about this, and this is the document she's referring to. And if you were to look at it, you would see that my son, this is his version, Charlie, my son, Janet, her daughters, we all signed this document. And what it says is we were consenting to the court doing the boundary agreements. There's no mention of any easement in there, not a word. And there's no mention of any easement in this document, which is the actual will of my father that was approved by the probate court. I'll pull that out for you. And then we all spent thousands of dollars of the state money. This is the will. And you can see here, I've marked off the part where it talked about Article 5th and how the land is to be distributed. Because in an email to the executor, Janet stated that it couldn't have been her father's intention to leave her this land that she couldn't access. But the intention can't be more clear. It's right here in Article 5 of what he intended for each of my brother and my sister and I to receive. And she is to receive, it's right here. I marked it off for you, so you can see that she receives all the land. It doesn't go to Charlie or I or the grandchildren, and it's exactly the plot that's on the map. Now, if you were to go to the stipulation that was entered into by all the family members as well, after the mediation process was resolved, you would see, and I can find that document somewhere, hopefully I brought it, I know I did. That stipulation lays out the boundaries of the property in exact accordance with the map that you have in front of you. There are no changes to it. At a certain point, the executor made a clerical error, not understanding, and she has told me this herself, that she made a clerical error along with the surveyor, not understanding that Janet had 300 feet of road frontage. So they introduced into a map a right-of-way through my property. There's never been one email or one phone call asking me about this or informing me that it was coming. I simply received an email with this consent form, and then later I noticed that on a map, there was a right-of-way. And I called the executor on that day, and I explained, I've never known about this. And she explained to me, oh, well, we did that because we thought it had to be there. And I said, well, it doesn't, because there's 300 feet of road frontage. And she immediately, in that phone call on a Friday afternoon while I was in Florida, that's where I work, she explained to me that there had been a mistake, that they didn't realize there had been 300 feet there, and there was never any reason for the right of way to be placed there.
We didn't go over that at our preliminary, so you can have that also on the record.
I
So
just want
what
to get it
am
all out in front of us.
Yeah.
So there never has been a need for a right of way. There's no need for Janet to be able to access anything. If a road costs $50 or $50 million, that has nothing to do with your zoning regulations. Lloyd Farnham has spoken and said you can put a road there. I'm having a professional engineering report there. He can obviously put a road here circumventing Darlene Springs and not crossing them, or elevating a road over those springs. That's how engineering is done. As I said to the engineer I'm hiring, people built pyramids before we had control of electricity, and Americans built the interstate highway system. Please, I say politely, give me a break. You can't possibly tell me that you can't put a road there in that 500 feet, because again, remember, the 300 feet closes the zoning conversation. But the idea that Janet feels she should have a road, which is not covered in law in any way, could be in either the 300 feet or the 200 feet. That's up to her. She can put it anywhere she wants. The road doesn't have to hit the 300 feet, so it doesn't have to cross the part that Darlene was speaking about accurately. I understand your position completely. So I just want to get that out. Now, about this right of way.
Are you submitting these documents as evidence?
I'd be happy to leave them all with you.
Thank you.
Sure. In that case, I'll also leave these. This is the order approving the boundary agreements after the consents were signed. Again, you'll see there's no mention of a right of way. This is the probate court's order, obviously the true jurisdiction of authority here. And Justice Kilgore approved the consent agreement that we all signed, and there it is. There's an email here from Janet that to the executor stating, I'm not sure what that is, but okay. There's an email that you have here where Janet states that it couldn't have been her father's intention to leave her that property. I'm sorry to go through your papers. If I go here, that's in here, and I marked it all for you here. It says, it is definitely not my dad's intent to bequeath me property that could never be accessed or used. Well, the land is written out in the will, so his intention to leave what he left her is crystal clear in the will. And then it was agreed upon in the stipulation by Janet's signature and mine and Charlie's and everyone else's. We're done here. There's nothing to talk about this evening. But of course, I flew up from Florida last night and drove from New York today so I could be here with all of you to try to clarify some of this. Now, about the personal side of this, Janet mentioned
Can
something.
we get to the personal side?
I
Thank you
need to
very
touch on
much.
one
No,
thing. I'm
I
sorry.
think
I'm
it's
sorry.
not, it's not. a
I
personal-
understand,
Thank
but I
you.
was just spoken of in a negative manner
I
in
did
public.
see that and I cut her off. Did you see that? I
Yes,
also cut her
and I'd
off.
just like to answer it quickly.
No, you guys can talk about that over there, okay?
Okay, that's
Because
fine.
that's not for the record
fine.
and it's not,
Fine.
gonna- I
That's
don't
fine. We
really
need
want
not.
to.
Good. Thank you.
Personal drama.
Thank you.
please.
That's
Thank
fine.
you.
That's fine.
I'm
All I
sorry.
want to
there's so
talk
much
about is the
drama.
law. I do want to be able to
Thank
say this to you. The reason that I cannot agree to this right of way is because, as you can see, there's animosity in the family. These are photographs of Ray on our property. The property was left to me at 5:30 in the morning on subsequent days after my family was living there. My wife has not returned to the home for 3 years because she's afraid to be there. There's an email here where I wrote to Janet and explained to her that I'd met Ray out in the field when I went to say hello to him.
I don't think this is
I
relevant for the
cannot share
discussion.
the property with these
Okay,
people.
thank you. That's what you can say instead of telling
Yes,
me the
that's
story.
all I
All
want to
right, thank
I
you.
will not be able to agree. So
Okay.
I'm sorry that that's the case, and I don't want to burden the town or the room or anyone. And I'll
Well, you
stop
are,
right there.
and so it's this whole
I'll
thing is a
stop right there.
burden, okay? So
I
thank
wanted to
you.
cover the legal parts of it,
I
and thank
appreciate
you for
that.
letting me
Thank
do
you
that.
that for these papers, because I can look at them and I
Yeah,
can
thank you
see
very
them more
much.
clearly what the, yes.
Thank you very much,
I
and I'll
think
leave
it
this with
would
you
be
as well.
really
Thank you.
behoove us to go through all the sections because we're gonna get to section 460. Okay?
Thank
which
you.
They asked a waiver of, which has to do with access road. I said,
It's my bad.
it's all right. There's a bunch of waivers that have been asked for, and if we go through every one of them and they have to be made the decision on whether or not these things are met, because you've made a waiver of it, it's not something that we have to review.
Right.
Because
But
we have to look at it, but what I'm just saying, if we have to the DRB, not we, the DRB has to decide whether or not to accept that waiver. So there is a whole section, 460, which is on the waiver list for access roads and driveways. And because we're not asking for development on those lots, that's why they asked for the waivers.
Right.
Well, the state asked for the waivers. Let's get.
But we still need to consider the way the property has been divided up, whether it's affecting wetlands or whether it's affecting
Well,
access.
but you have to remember, they asked, that's why you need to go
All
up
right,
to the
well, that-
top and go 1, 2, 3, 4.
Well,
So
that's
that we
what
can
we're
discuss
gonna
every
do. So
single waiver,
may
which
we
has to do with
proceed?
stormwater, et
We
cetera.
have somebody else who wants to
Sorry, I'm
speak?
losing my patience.
Yeah. All right, please, let's not air family drama, but I appreciate any information that helps us understand how to do our job.
Sure. I'm Brad Wheeler. I am the wetland consultant that looked at the potential access, the potential driveway. I believe you received.
Yes, I read it.
This letter I put together. The reality is that permitting, a driveway through a wetland like this while I can't say it's impossible, the real likelihood is that the state will force an applicant requesting that sort of a driveway to prove that there's no other options at all to get through there. And even then, as I described in the letter, it's not unprecedented that they would say it's too much of an adverse impact to this valuable wetland and we're not going to approve it. So I think it's a real likelihood that the state would say we cannot permit a driveway through that area. It's a big wetland area. It's unavoidable.
Yes, thank you. I did read that and I have those concerns because one of our jobs is to consider the environmental impact of major subdivisions. And this does have an impact on the wetland if somebody, I mean, somebody might not be able to build a road there and then not have access. So, you know, and what I hear you saying is you'd like to have access to your property. And I think it's also a part of the development of the town of Plainfield, as Janet said, to make lots developable. If they're going to be a lot, it should be able to be developed.
Right.
So, I mean, it's not good enough just to be there for the trees, so.
No, and in terms of the type of wetland that we're looking at in there, it's one that the state and the federal government would look at as particularly valuable. It's a, you know, red maple cedar swamp with an organic surface layer in the soils. Not especially rare, but certainly one that they will take real measures to protect. So I'd be frankly surprised to see a driveway be permitted through there. You know, physically, it's not impossible to build one,
Right,
but it would have a
environmental impact
huge impact
on the
and
wetland.
probably, I think the likelihood is it's not something that could be permitted.
Thank you for your time.
Yes.
And I'm gonna walk to the map. I just want to look at the map for
Yep.
a second. I understood, so you understand, obviously, I'm confused because my eyes are really bad. It's over here. I'm sorry. Go.
Mhm.
This is the 300.
No,
Where's Steve
300
Durden?
is
Here,
right
here's
here.
the 300.
Yeah.
Here's the 200. Are you also saying that you've surveyed here and determined that
This
would be a
is
problem?
all springs. There's springs
Oh, no.
all in here.
Right, and this is a road that goes between them. I'm just saying, I mean, did you look at both sides of Steve Durden?
I didn't come in here, came in here,
Mhm.
walked up through, saw these wells,
Mhm.
came up here to where this becomes a steep slope up through here.
Yep.
Yeah, you can see the sketch that I put together that,
Yeah, but you didn't observe this part.
I was not in there, no.
Okay, so I just wanted to clarify that, because the road can go anywhere if you want the road. But again,
It's true.
if I understand the Plainfield zoning regulations, they don't speak of roads, so I understand that too. But I'll sit back down. I
Thank
just wanted to
you.
ask you that question, Brad. I thought
Right,
you
and
hadn't had a chance to look at this 200 feet.
I-
Obviously, as Heather said, the executor, there'll be competing engineering reports in the end, if that's, you know, I mean, you're a professional. I got it. Thank you for rendering an opinion. I have an opinion as well in my pocket, and I have another opinion that I've paid now to have generated, and they are competing opinions. Obviously, that's something for the probate court, as the executor said, because you can't decide it because it's outside the zoning law. The zoning law is about the 300 feet. I'm going to stop right there.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
Brad. I
Mhm.
just wanted to clarify you hadn't looked at the other 200 feet.
right.
Yeah, I also should point out that where he did walk, that Mark is saying is accessible, there is a spring missing there.
Right, down here. Right. You're
Oh,
saying,
not here, but yeah.
yeah, over
That
here you
where
said
he's saying it's accessible.
is
there
another
a
spring
there.
missing. So that's something you might want to.
Right,
The complexity and the vegetation, we said.
and it's the same all the way up through. That's why there's a spring up there, because it's wet.
Yeah.
It's springs.
I understand. Thank you, and Heather.
That's something you can take up.
I won't respond to anything unless you ask me to, but I just wanted to clarify the record that I'm not the executor. I'm the lawyer who represents the executor. The executor is Paul Gillis.
Okay. All right, thank you. Maybe you could help me, just clarify that these maps were drawn up by Robert Barish and Paul before he passed. Robert, so the maps, this division of the property,
No, there was a will, that was drawn up by Paul and Robert Baird before he passed. And then after that, the beneficiaries agreed to a stipulation that altered the distribution, proposed distribution.
Excuse me, who's speaking?
Heather,
Sorry,
can you hear her?
Heather's speaking.
Not very well.
Okay,
I
Heather,
can't hear
can you
you.
start over about,
Uh,
I
she should-
asked, did you hear my question, Mary?
Yes.
Okay,
So there was a, there wasn't a map that I'm aware of that was drawn up by
Robert.
Paul or Robert Barish. There was a will that was drawn up by Paul as Mr. Barish's attorney. And then after Mr. Barish passed and the probate proceeding had been opened, the beneficiaries agreed to a stipulation that altered the distribution from the will, and that stipulation was approved and ordered by the court. And I believe the stipulation is this outline, and part of the stipulation was that we would then go forward and survey the property.
so everybody agreed, all parties, beneficiaries agreed to this map. Is that what you're telling me?
Incorrect.
I
You
think
agreed to
that's
the map that
a
has the
disagreement
right
among the
of way.
beneficiaries, and that's one of the reasons why I think if there's going to be an argument about an easement, it really needs to be in the probate court. It's the estate's understanding that the easement is not included in the stipulation because it doesn't say easement or right of way in the stipulation. So it's this estate's understanding that it was not required by the stipulation and that the estate doesn't have the authority to impose it against disagreement of the beneficiaries. If that's incorrect, the estate would really need to hear that from the probate court, or if the beneficiaries wanted to challenge that, I again think that needs to happen in the probate court.
Okay, I'm sorry, I
Yeah.
need to wrap my head around this.
Okay.
The map, there was in this will that I've been given, a desire for Robert's property to be divided amongst his beneficiaries.
Yes.
Then it went to probate, and probate, they created, it changed. The will changed and everybody agreed on it.
Well, the will didn't change, but the distribution
Distribution of
changed.
how,
The proposed
Well,
distribution changed of
okay.
how the property would get divided up
okay,
and conveyed to the
and everybody
beneficiaries.
agreed to that.
And everybody
And
agreed.
Janet's point is she agreed to it with the right of way. And
Yes.
Mark's position is that,
That's not what Janet's saying, just so we're clear, Janet might wanna.
please don't speak for Janice,
Oh,
I'm sorry.
But that's not what she's saying, I just want. to make it
Well,
clear.
no, that's not what you're saying.
She's saying she doesn't agree with the map, she doesn't agree with the stipulation not containing the right of way.
I didn't hear Janet.
The stipulation, you guys agreed in court, you agreed to a rearrangement of the wealth and that the redistribution of the property, you all agreed to that.
We agreed to the map of the boundaries of the property. Yes, we did.
And you agree, and that stipulation you all signed and agreed.
We signed a map that had the right of way,
No, it's not.
that every single person.
So that
signed the
that
map,
happened.
And it was signed.
Well,
on
there's
the
two
law.
things. There's the stipulation, right? And then there's the boundaries.
No.
So there were
I know that. I've read it.
stuff I didn't want to get.
I know, well, we can't
So-
help ourselves.
That's the stipulation. It's several pages, but it's actually just one page because people signed it on different.
Okay, I can't read it right now, but what I'd like to know is that
So-
they all, a stipulation was like, this person gets this and this person gets that,
Yeah,
and everybody
yeah.
agreed to it.
So like the stipulation says.
And you agreed to it,
The lot formally conveyed to Nathan shall be merged to the one with Mark,
right?
and that Janet would get 2 5-acre lots
Up here.
up there and things like that.
Can you tell me whose this lot is? This is
all
all,
one, and that's
all
Parish.
Charlie's
Yeah,
lot, okay.
And part of the stipulation was that that Sunwise Surveying shall survey the lots according to the stipulation. And so then we went forward to survey the lots according to the stipulation. We sent out an email to the beneficiary saying this is the survey. The initial survey had an easement on it.
Yep,
It was
which
a-
we saw it,
Right, which was not in the stipulation.
right?
Um,
Understand that.
it wasn't objected to initially. Mark Barish objected to it a couple months later. There was also stuff about boundary
Did people
agreements.
sign it?
Nobody signed it.
It was just a verbal
It was
agreement.
emails.
And
I
that-
wouldn't even say it was an agreement.
It just-
People didn't object to
What you saw, they
to
saw.
what I sent, yeah.
What he signed.
And there were reiterations of it, like this is not what was original.
Right,
That shape was a little bit, sorry, you don't see what I'm doing. The 2 5 acres going to Janet had a slightly different configuration in the initial survey. Because we overlooked the road frontage requirement, and so Lisa redid those to have
Okay.
the road frontage requirement. So there were small changes like that that happened in the iterations of the survey. And so my understanding is that it's Mark's position that it's not in that easement on lot 5, which is supposed to go to Mark, is not part of the stipulation. And my understanding from Janet's attorney is that it may be implied in the stipulation and that, and that the
was
parties
not,
agree to it
what
later.
was not in the stipulation,
So
Mark?
there was, in our initial survey, there was an
Right,
easement like
right.
that.
Yes, I
And-
understand, but
and
that
s-
wasn't in the stipulation.
Right.
Right,
But I believe, as I understood in October, when I talked to Janet's attorney about it, I think her argument, one of the arguments was that that easement was implied in the stipulation, even though it wasn't explicit in the stipulation.
okay,
And also that because of the later emails about the survey, that there was kind of an approval of one of the surveys as we were doing it. And so now
Right.
everybody is bound to the easement. So I think those are competing arguments, which
Okay.
again, I think are best in the probate
Court.
court. Yeah.
yes. Can it,
Sorry, give that
can
to
it
you.
be,
I'll get out of the chair. so you
It's
can-
okay, I don't need a chair. I'll use my teacher voice, not a problem. Two things. One is that I have an email from the executor saying that this right-of-way was codified and would be in the deed. So I don't even understand this discussion. The person who is the attorney for the executor said it will be in your deed. So there is no further discussion on that. I have a simple solution, or I think I might. There is no access from the 300 or the 200 place. So that means that we have a landlocked parcel. To me, the DRB has to just say, we can't approve this without an access. If Mark and I and Charlie and Paul Gillis and Heather Devine want to discuss about what kind of access we're going to do so that we can come back
Back
to the
to me,
DRB
yes,
and then have something for you that you can approve. I feel like that's the best solution. We're taking up everybody's time. We're not going to be able to come to an agreement. It's not your job to resolve that. What your job is, you have the engineer report, you have Darlene, you have the Springs, you have that. It can't be approved because it does not meet your regulations.
okay, thank you.
And so
Okay,
we'll try
thank
to
you.
solve it for
All
you.
right, I'm gonna have a conversation with my board members right now. Will, welcome aboard.
No, thank you, thank you.
You've had this kind of situation before. You're not new to this, right?
No, no.
And
Um,
Mary. So, you've heard the discussion and I'm just gonna put out, maybe you heard my position. I'm not comfortable approving this major subdivision with, road frontage that is that would not allow access to the property. I would be even willing to postpone the hearing and go do a site visit, but I'm not an engineer. We have engineering studies. I'm also willing to wait for more engineering studies, but it doesn't feel, I feel like one of our jobs is to protect wetlands and to protect land and to make lands easily accessible. It doesn't sound like it's easily accessible to me with the evidence of springs and wetlands. And so I would like to send it back to them to come up with an access. What are your thoughts?
well, there's also the boundary adjustment with Darlene that is not quite resolved. So that's, I mean, in theory, you could approve it contingent on that resolution. But we have the resolution of the right of way, which I think is a little more of a difficult resolution. So if the parties, if Janet and Mark and the other beneficiaries are saying, we need more time to resolve this, and there's not a big rush to get it done, having it done right is better than having it done. Because I think either way, how we approve it, it's gonna be a problem.
Another 5 years term.
Okay, thank you, Will. Mary?
I would agree with Will, but I don't know what the process would be for if we deny or whatever, what would happen next? Would it be continued? Would it, how would it work?
Well,
That's
yeah, we could just
zoning
continue it.
administrator. What, we'll continue it, Will? Will knows.
Yeah,
Yeah, we
I
could,
would take a motion.
yeah. Well, the
Well-
option is, there's a couple of options. The first one is we can not close the hearing. We can set another date for it. And we wouldn't need to warn it, but it could be a little while before it's a date unknown. So, I think this hearing, we could, vote to not come to a resolution, and would it be a whole new application? That's what I'm not quite sure of. Maybe
Well,
Karen.
I think that if we said that the application's incomplete because we don't see an access, we see a landlocked or a boundary, inaccessible lot developed, so that we need to have that resolved before we can, and that might change, they might have to go back and change all these boundary lines. We don't know. And we want them to resolve the Covey boundary line.
Yeah, so an incomplete application is probably the best way, because it doesn't we can't make a decision on it based on the way it's done.
So
So
would that be a vote and then we deny it as that is because incomplete, or can we could continue it?
I don't think we need to deny it. I think we can just continue it at a date uncertain when we have more information, would be my.
Tabling it?
No, because tabling it means, we're gonna take it up at a later date with more
Yeah.
information.
Okay.
That
so
would
then
be
we-
my suggestion.
Well,
We just
do
don't have a
we
date for
talk
that.
about Setting another date? Are we not allowed? I think we have to have another date, Will.
Yeah, I think so. If we're gonna continue it, I think that's the case. We could, Karen,
Yeah.
you want?
Heather has a suggestion.
I think you can set a date, but then continue it again.
We can.
Yeah.
And then we just have to
Basically,
inform
continue.
via email this participating body.
That's smart.
All right.
I can't hear Heather.
She's saying that we could make a date and then we could always post, like we did with the Bean Road, postpone it again and then into the future until they get their work to come before us and we have the information we're asking for.
Yeah, it's really a question of setting the date that everybody is informed on, which is what the hearing notification is.
But as it continues, we don't have to, but our illustrious zoning administrator always makes sure that all interested parties are informed via
Yes.
email of the continuance. 'cause it doesn't-
Right. And what the interested parties are all in the room.
Right, so
Yeah.
they would know this next date and then they would also know
Yes.
if we postponed it. Heather, did you have a suggestion to a date since this, as the attorney for the executor of the estate, you might have an idea of how long it might take to resolve these concerns with the interested parties?
No. You could try from a month out, see what happens.
Do we have another hearing next month?
we don't have an application yet.
Okay. So how about a motion, Will?
Well, I would propose that the motion is to continue the hearing to a date. And were we gonna set a date?
Yeah, a month from now.
Oh, okay, then
That would be
I'll
our
make,
February what?
12.
February 12th.
I'll make the motion that the hearing be continued till February 12th, 7 o'clock, same location. We'll
Yep.
send out a Zoom invitation, and at that point, we'll hopefully have more information to continue the hearing. If not, we will set another date.
Mary, will you second that?
I will second that.
All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Heather?
If the boundary with the Covey property is an issue, I think I should address the remarks about that.
Okay,
Concerned about.
we are. I'd like some clarity on that.
Okay, so what, my understanding what happened was, as I said, the surveyor, can you hear me? Should I move?
Yes.
Come sit here. Please.
Wait, do we have a motion on the floor that
No,
needs
we
to be?
approved it.
Okay,
We approved
that's
it.
right.
We're moving onward,
Thank you,
trying to get everybody home before midnight.
So,
thank you.
so when the surveyor, Lisa Gannett, did the initial research, she found that there was a portion of the boundary that she couldn't draw. It wasn't possible. And so we discussed it and proposed that we just choose a boundary and see if the neighbor was open to that. So I contacted Ms. Covey. She said she might be open to that. And there were more communications where I sent the sketch plan to her that Lisa had prepared. Ms. Covey said that it was wrong. So I suggested that would it be helpful if Lisa went and walked the boundary with you? And she said yes. She also wanted Janet and her husband to come. That was Ms. Covey's request. I thought that was fine. So they all went and walked the property. Lisa told me that she put in flags at that time. And Lisa, when I learned later that there was a concern about the flags being moved, I reached back out to Lisa about that. She said they had not been moved. They never been moved. They put the flags there. They did come back to blaze them. I have her email. I think they said they came back 2 times. So anyway, and when we were at the meeting in November, Janet had said that Ms. Covey wasn't comfortable with the boundary agreement, which I had not heard from her. So I reached out to Ms. Covey about that. It took a while to connect with her. When I did reach her, she told me that she was concerned that the boundary had been moved, but that she wanted to wait for Janet to come back from vacation. They were going to walk the line together and she would get back to me. I asked if she wanted Lisa to come back out. She said no, that wasn't a positive relationship and she didn't want her to come. I said I didn't have the final survey yet, but I would send it to her when I did. She said that's fine. So I sent it to her. When she got it, she said the springs were wrong. And I've talked to Lisa about that. And that's, I don't want to get distracted by that.
Right,
And she said she couldn't tell whether the boundary was okay because her house wasn't on it.
right.
And I said, well, it's not going to show your house because it's not a survey of your property. And she said, I'll see if I can get someone to help me with it.
Okay.
That was the conversation we had last week. And then on Monday, I got an affidavit that was submitted to you addressed to the probate court saying that she had told me she wasn't comfortable with the boundary agreement and that I had pressured her to sign it. That is not at all my recollection. I don't remember her ever telling me that. And I tried very hard not to pressure her, and that I had told her not to trust Janet, which I did not. I did tell her to please talk to me directly because there had been all these problems with the surveyor, she said, and I didn't know about any of them. She said she had told Janet, and I said, Janet's not the representative of the estate, and please talk to me directly. And so the last communication I had from Ms. Covey on the phone last week was that she thought it was probably okay, but she wanted to double check. And then I got the affidavit on Monday saying that she was pressured into it and she wasn't comfortable with it. So my conclusion from that was she's not comfortable with the boundary agreement. She doesn't want me to communicate with her that feels pressuring, and that's fine. It's totally her right to agree or not agree. And I'm not going to pressure her into doing that. So that's the situation. As far as I know, and as far as Lisa has told me, what is on the map is exactly what was pointed out by by Ms. Covey and everybody on that walk, and it hasn't been changed.
Okay.
And she's attested to that. Lisa has, and anyway, that's all I know about that. But that's why I was trying to say in the beginning that I guess I'm begging you not to put me in the position of forcing a resolution of it. If Ms. Covey doesn't agree with it, I think that should be okay. And it should be left
Then what do we,
unresolved.
how do we resolve an unresolved boundary line?
I think we just, the suggestion Lisa had was that we leave it on there, but instead of this notation says there's going to be a boundary agreement adopted.
Okay.
Instead of saying that, we basically recognize that there's an ambiguity in the chain of title. And, that would need to be investigated. And this is where we think that the boundary is, but just recognize that ambiguity exists.
Okay.
You'd
You'd have to submit it now.
Yeah, so that's what I was saying. That's one of the small changes that I think it's
Okay.
a small change that would need to be made. But then we wouldn't have to force a resolution. It can stay a private property matter. And like I said earlier, this isn't something the subdivision is creating. It's something that was already existing. And, I think anyone who deals much with property knows that that's very common in Vermont to have unknown property boundaries. And I think it would be pretty terrible if an abutter was faced with either an agreement or a lawsuit, basically, anytime someone wanted to subdivide because that
Right,
property had to
right.
get resolved.
Right.
So,
Well, I think I feel like our job is to bring neighbors together and try to create understanding and hopefully resolution that people are happy with. So I understand what you're saying. And do you understand what she's saying, Darlene? And would you be all right with that it isn't an assigned agreement, but it's left ambiguous? Like not clear, sorry. Ambiguous, thank you. Well, and I don't know if you can see this map, but this map does note that you have 50 feet, which is the minimum setback to your shed.
Yeah.
Yes.
She said, my house, it wasn't on there because my house is not part of their.
The
property.
survey, yeah.
But, it's either, the shed was on there and I think the house should be, I don't understand.
Is the house beside the shed or is it on the other side of
No.
the shed? But by the stone wall or near the road?
Where the shed is,
Yeah.
okay, if you're looking at okay.
I see,
this
come
way,
here, come up here.
okay,
See that, here's where it says the shed is.
Yeah,
and
the
just-
shed's here.
Yep.
And the house is to this side of it.
And is the shed closer to it's farther, is it your shed? Is your house a little further away this way then?
The way topographically, I can't tell without it being on there.
Okay,
the shed is on there because there had been previously a question about whether there was a
setback.
proper setback.
Right.
So we thought, put it on there,
Make
show
it-
that there's not a problem.
The
and-
house,
And the house, there wasn't a question about that, as far as I know. And so,
would you check into that?
yes,
Thank
but
you.
this, with
But
all the
she's okay with it not being official.
Okay.
That was my big question, but I just wanted to know that you have the 50-foot setback from the shed, yeah. About this issue?
About this issue.
Okay,
So I don't think that Darlene and I have any problem
No.
agreeing on a boundary. And I do believe that we should have it codified and agreed.
would
It
you
would
work
be
on
great.
that in the next month?
I would.
Okay,
But
thank
I
you.
want to go back to something that Darlene said that I think is underlying, and it's not your job to resolve that. The wastewater permit is one of the reasons she has chosen not to sign it. And I understand that.
I think you'd have to go to the state for that, you're right.
They have made her
There's-
property undeveloped.
I know they
So
did
it
that in
comes
East
to the
Montpelier. It's
DRB.
the whole thing that the
Yeah, but
state
the
does that.
state of Vermont passed regulate, I have no
I know.
recourse against it.
And we
I-
had no idea that this was even happening until we get a map that shows
Yeah.
the potential septic system if the other septic, we didn't even know there was being a septic system designed.
Yeah.
In fact, I believe my attorney asked for communication from Paul Gillis's office just so we knew what was happening. We got nothing. We get a map that said, and Darlene looked at that and said, wait a minute, this means I can never put water on the property that I intended to sell as a development for the town of Plainfield.
I don't
And
know
so
where
I
you
have
go to
res-
appeal
or I
that.
have restrictions.
I have no
And I
idea.
my property that I pay taxes on.
I know, I have the same problem in property in East Montpelier. I
still,
think it's a
that
state,
needs
that's
to
a
be
state
part
issue.
Of this resolution
Yes.
in this time frame of figuring something
Well,
out.
I think you have a lawyer, ask your lawyer.
Well, a very simple solution is my dad had, I don't know, 170 a year, whatever it was. There are many other options for that septic design. It was put there and it infringed on Darlene's
Well,
property rights with
hopefully,
absolutely nothing. I know when my husband had somebody building next to him,
Well,
he was given a piece of paper that he had to sign that said he would never put water on that piece of property so the other person could put their septic tank there. Nothing happened here except a map appeared that was all completed.
listen, I understand, okay?
Yep.
So we don't have to go through it again. I understand you want a resolution of it. We're continuing this hearing. I would like to have resolutions to this too. I feel like we're here to help neighbors figure things out, and hopefully the legal structure can help figure that out, and hopefully it won't take too much time.
I would be happy to walk back with Lisa and Darlene and just be sure that what we agreed on is what's on that map.
Okay.
And I think that's what we.
Well, you come back next week and figure it out. Next
month.
month, not next week, thank you.
I'll be here by myself.
Right.
Thank you.
I don't even know about this.
February, it's the second Wednesday of the month.
Well,
At 7:10, let's just say, so we can get settled in. Do you want to have it here again? It's such a pain.
but there's this many people, it's not gonna fit in the other day.
All right, well, your computer didn't do this, but his did. So I'll bring mine, but mine might not do either.
Well, let's talk to the select board, because they're gonna set up a system here, so let's get them to set a system up and not use their personal computer.
Okay, by the 12th. All right, I'm gonna, let y'all talk amongst yourselves, and I'm going to, close the hearing for this evening and let Heather, you have one more thing.
Sorry, yeah.
Could I-
just the whole- When you guys took the vote to continue the hearing, it sounded like you wanted resolution on both the boundary agreement and
The
access.
covey, yeah.
But is it an actual decision by the whole board that you don't need to resolve the boundary? It's just the access.
No, we made that, will also put in there the covey boundary. So I think you should try to pursue that and come back and tell us where it's at. Thank you. I'm sorry, but thanks.
Could I
All
ask?
right, a motion to adjourn the hearing.
Cantor.
Oh, not the adjourn, no, but the hearing's closed at 8:38.
Do you think I could ask a question as well?
So can
Is that
guys-
you, Nathan?
Excuse me,
Yes.
everybody. Can you guys
Sure,
come
hi.
downstairs? Cause they
I
have to
can-
do some business and they won't be able to hear the business over all you guys talking.
Hang on, Nathan. I can't hear
That's
you.
okay.
that well.
See the Karen?
I'm sorry, I'm trying my best here.
No, take your time.
If you guys go downstairs, then they can finish their meeting and then they can hear. Okay, I'm the coach, I'm blowing the whistle downstairs.
I'd like a snack over there. Maybe you can try to talk to me. What's up?
So just a couple quick things. So, I know what Will mentioned in that, we want to do this the right way, and, if there's I do think that, in terms of the month out hearing and what will be required to, show for the ability to build roads on the property, and et cetera. I don't know, I was thinking it might be worthwhile to kind of define what the burden of proof would be for that. So that we can come back best prepared to drive towards resolution in terms of, okay, it's possible, but how possible, right? Where do we draw the line there? So that,
Yeah, I'll look further into our zoning regs, but one of the things when we look at major subdivision, it has to look at the environmental impact
Right.
on development and the accessibility of the lots. So in other situations, there had to be a right of way because that was the only, and it has to be of a certain slope and pitch and, you know, and, not through wetlands. So that's where I feel like that the burden is to show that there's excessive, that property can, if it's gonna be a lot, that it has a way to access the lot that's not negatively impacting the environment.
Okay, I mean,
That's
yeah, I
what you
guess,
have to
so, I
look
mean,
at. Okay,
that part in terms of like, you know, it can't be on wetlands, is that part,
right.
is that part
Or on
codified?
somebody's spring, driving over somebody's spring, that too. You know, it can't be endangering people's springs. That's also, those are serious concerns.
Certainly, certainly, I was just wondering, you know, if there are, let's say there's a 20-foot by 20-foot area of wetland or et cetera, like, is there something codified where it says, okay, this amount of
Yeah, there has
environmental,
to, if
this
you
amount.
look at the letter that, the wetland engineer submitted, he talked about, there are, 20-foot or 25-foot buffer zones, like, so if you want to put a road in a wet area, it
Mhm.
has to have a 20-foot buffer zone from the designated wetland. Those are state rules. That's what the engineer was speaking of, and I only know them peripherally as I'm speaking to you about them. So, that's,
Okay.
you'd have to look at that. More in,
Thank you.
thank you. All right. So, we have, I know, thank you, Will, for joining us today.
Sure, I won't be able to vote on the minutes because I weren't at those meetings, but I can vote on the next minutes because I'll be at the next meeting.
Right, well, usually we just adopt them and, you know,
Okay.
like, we're a 5-member board, but there's only 3 of us. So I feel like because there's only 3 of us, we should say 2 is a majority amongst the 3. If we had 5 and they were absent, I'd understand that we would need 3, right?
Yeah, no, 2 will work.
Okay, so, Mary, I read your minutes. Thank you for the brevity. And I'll make a motion. I usually, not always do that, but I'm gonna make a motion to adopt the meeting minutes of December 11th, 2024. Okay.
Oh, she's muted, but
And we're in favor, and so we've got that, and then I did read both decisions. We have the decision from Devin Lynch. I thought that was well written, and so I'll make a motion that we approve the decision, the Devin Lynch appeal.
I
Decision.
second.
Okay, and then both of us are in favor since we both voted and seconded. And then we also have the decision of the boundary, the Caitlin Rosine and Eric Schulte's law, wanting to add on to their building. And I'll make a motion that those decisions also be,
I second.
all right, then, we've done our business.
Excellent.
Any other business?
So, you know, you
You-
can use
you
my
can-
computer.
I'm almost done.
No, I'm not in a hurry. I'm saying I'll wait.
We just did all of that.
Okay.
You're inside there, so just do what you need to do and I'll wait. It's okay.
Okay, I'll let you know. I'll turn it off and I'll.
You guys.
Come get it in a little while. It's
Okay,
fine.
thank you, Mark.
Yeah.
Thank
I
you for your help.
apologize. I didn't know you were still meeting. They were just asking me about that map. I didn't mean to keep.
Oh, no, I didn't, we were busy.
They
meeting.
did it without,
Okay.
well, I was trying to herd you.
Okay.
We did it.
Please, I think.
I'd like to
it
go
would be
walking.
very helpful.
I would like to
and happy to help out.
All right, I'd love to,
Can
just-
we finish the meeting?
Okay.
Please.
Okay,
yeah, I think it's
any other
finished. We-
business?
We'll be sure to say that the meeting is not closed, the hearing is continued. Don't
Right.
adjourn anything, don't close
No,
anything.
it's a
Yes.
continued hearing.
Continuance.
And if you
And-
want to join us again,
Can I just put in a plug that, you know, the planning commission's trying to adopt some new zoning. So if you have the opportunity to read through the draft that's on the thing and come up with some suggestions.
for subdivision regulation.
Well, or, I mean, you guys have to deal with it as much as we do. So if you see something that's really silly and I don't know if you've been paying attention, but there's a lot of discussion about small lots. One of the discussions was maybe make a small lot of conditional use. So that would throw more work into your lap if someone wanted to make small lots rather than having being permitted, they'd be a conditional. Also,
You mean
multi-
existing small lots or the new small lots?
the minimum lot size was proposed to be 1/10 of an acre instead of 1/5 of an acre, which is the
But
state.
isn't that only in the village?
Yes, only in the village. This
So
is
I
only,
feel like only in the village, I don't feel like we need to have that be a conditional use.
well, that's not, I mean,
You got
there's
some pushback from that.
a lot, quite a
Well,
bit of
I
pushback.
saw some of that on Plainfield People.
Yeah, you can watch the recording of the meeting. It's on the website. And it's the 1/10 of an acre is a really contentious thing.
Well, you
So
know, yeah, okay,
yeah,
well, what do you
what-
feel? Would you like it to be conditional use?
if it, otherwise, we might not have, we might just be stuck with 1/5 of an acre. There are 11/10 of an acre parcels already existing in the village. So if someone wanted to put a little lot in the village as an option, as an affordable way to get a house, I don't think that's unreasonable. The fear is that somebody's gonna take all 130 acres of Goddard and put a 1,300 of an acre lots on them, because it's a permitted use, but if it was a.
But what about maybe we could say, oh, but they're gonna be in the village? Are they gonna be in the village, Goddard?
Yes,
No.
we're putting Goddard in the village, because if they're not in the village, they're stuck with rural
Well,
residential.
then I do think conditional use is a good thing because I feel like our role as the Development Review Board, which you saw here, is like is to help people understand these proposals and to find out what's acceptable to the neighbors. Like maybe
Right,
a 10th
right.
of a lot, it would be fine to one neighbor, not another. And
Right, right.
know?
And then it's all tied in with and the other option I am tossing out is if you do a major subdivision, it should be, no more than 40% or 50% are the small lots and the rest have to be bigger.
I like that.
Or 30% or whatever the number is. And then the other thing is that, the village expansion project is really lighting up the social media.
I
And
noticed.
and so
That's good.
yeah, it is. It's great. We used to have these hearings on the zoning and 2 people would show up. Now we got 20, 25.
I'm excited, actually. I would like to see the village expansion process happen, and I want people to be involved. And I think that people automatically go to their worst possible scenario. It's like
Right.
of the best options, and then negotiate the edges. Instead of like automatically going to the edge. But
Right, that's the purpose of a conditional use, because it gives another layer of review. The only thing is it makes the DRB busier, just letting you
that's
know.
okay.
Okay,
That's okay. I feel like
okay,
if I can do one small thing in my community, which is help people
Remember, we
communicate.
have him.
Yeah.
we have to-
All right.
okay,
All
so
right.
anyway,
Well, I've been meaning to read them, but it's like not bedtime reading material.
it is, no, that's why the planning commission is a very small group, because nobody wants to do it.
Read it all.
But the thing is, we've passed it on. The select board is gonna hold a hearing in 20 days, and that's the last time we can really make
I
any
need to go to
changes.
that hearing.
Yeah, before we send it off to a town vote, hopefully a town meeting.
When is that hearing?
But they haven't said it yet, or I don't know what time they said it. It's probably it's no less than 15 days.
Yes, I will. Because I
So-
don't always get everything
Yeah.
in a timely way. So Karen
Yeah.
will tell me, because I'd like to be a part,
Okay,
expect us in.
Are we adjourning the meeting?
yeah,
No,
we're not,
like-
we're just turning it off. It'll keep going on. Yeah, we don't want to say we're adjourning it. We're
No,
continuing.
this meeting.
Yeah, yeah, I'm gonna leave and you guys can
No,
clean up.
I'm gonna take a moment, we're gonna adjourn the meeting right now.
Okay.
Yes,
We're closing
Okay,
the meeting. This
closing the
meeting.
meeting. Okay, thanks,
Hearings already
everybody.
closed.
thank you.
Okay.
It is 8:49.
That's what I got.
Okay, good
Okay.
night. Good night. Yeah.
Karen, can you
Yes,
send
ma'am.
me who was at the hearing?
Yeah,
Thank you.
Okay.
All right, stop. I'm stopping the record.